Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay. Now the panel can begin, and I
All
will
right.
go away.
No, you stay, you stay. No, so our panel today, and I will be, well, I will probably be part moderator, part panelist, and add something, whether I say it or type things into the chat. And I definitely encourage all of you who are joining in to type in your responses to some of the questions, share some ideas, some resources, anything like that, make connections, because that's how we really can be prepared and focusing on AI, especially, it's like we need to learn about it, our students need to learn about it. And what I've said many times in the past, and especially in the last couple of weeks, because I've been fortunate to do a lot of different training and speaking, is nobody needs to do this by themselves. And administrators that are looking at policies and worrying about different tools to choose or platforms to use and the compliance, like all of the issues that surround it, there's a lot there, and you need to make sure that in your schools that you have a team in place and people from different experiences with AI, with technology, uh, even including students in the conversation, because that's when we really understand how it's being used, whether that's good or bad. We understand what teacher experiences have been, what maybe some of the hesitations are, what the needs are, and then we can figure out how to best empower teachers and students with AI in ways that are responsible and safe and ethical and all of those important things. And so, in our time here with these amazing people on the panel, we're going to talk about how, like some of these issues, how can AI be used responsibly? And how can it be used that we boost creativity? Because that's a concern as well that we've heard, and maybe even ourselves have said, like, oh, there goes creativity. Oh, there goes critical thinking. So some of those things where we're supporting student learning and getting them prepared for whatever is in the future, because we know it's going to involve AI even more than it does now. Also focusing on like teacher capacity, and then thinking about when we have something new like this, it's a lot to take on. A lot of people have expressed a lot of different adjectives about, you know, and nouns to describe what they think of when it comes to AI. And we have to be mindful that there are some different risks that are out there. Like the number one thing that people said was, oh, it's they're going to cheat. It's like people were cheating on assignments when I was in high school. They were trying to pay me money to do their French homework. And for the record, I did not accept, even though $5 back then was a lot of money. So working around those things. And so working around those things. And now, because if you were here earlier, and I had shared that 2027, the World Economic Forum, the Job Skills Outlook for 2027, number three on that list is AI and big data. And I shared some stats about the employers, and they're looking for people who are skilled with AI. And there was a census that was done that found that one of every three kids in the age range of 5 to 8 are already using AI for learning, for projects, and other things, which is fine because they're using it, but they don't understand how it works and they don't understand any potential bias that's within it. And teachers are sometimes a little bit hesitant, but it's around 50% have tried AI tools for the basic things that we do, like lesson plans, unit plans, creating resources, grading, giving feedback, assessments, all of the things that we've seen in some of the many tools that are out there. And so we know it can do all of these great things. I always say possibilities, but there's also responsibilities. And so the question people say, like, is it going away? It's not going away. So we have to kind of figure out how to use it. People will call it a teaching assistant, a co-pilot, but it's not meant to be a replacement, and nor should it be a substitute for teachers and the work that we do and for students and the work that they're doing. And so we have these panelists here today. I'll partially include myself, but I would like for them to introduce themselves. And so I'm going to start with Dr. Marialice.
It is so good to see you, by the way. So I just want to
You
start
too.
that way, to be in the same place at the same time. So
Yes.
I'm happy to join. Always coming in with a lens on how to use technology for good. Like that's just the space that I've been in. And, you can think of whatever those tech tools are, but specifically today about AI and having those like conversations way before the tech even begins. And I still think taking the digital citizenship like elements and embedding it into ongoing conversations, whether that's at school or at home, work or play, like I am a massive fan of that intergenerational approach for learning, especially when you're thinking about technology and an AI, because this affects everybody. This isn't just what our young people, right? Like something that's happening in school, but how do we involve our families as well? So I'm really, that's the lens I'm coming to this conversation with, and I'm really happy to be joining all of you.
Yeah, and for anybody that doesn't know, Dr. Marialice is the founder Digital Citizenship Institute, and I remember watching videos of her and her son talking about digital citizenship years ago. And so that is like totally, I'm excited to hear from you for that reason on this panel around this topic. And then next, how about Paige? Even the Paige, you've been here, but some people may not have been here, and I'd like to learn more about you too.
Yes. Yes. So, hi, I'm Paige Besthoff. I have been a classroom teacher, K through 12, teaching computer science for about 27 years now. So I've taught every grade, most recently in the last 10 years, the K to 5 group. And I am also a professional learning resource developer for a couple of different big name coding platforms. So I'm very involved in hearing from the teachers as to what they're looking for in their curriculum. And if anybody has any questions about standards, definitely I could be your go-to on that. Very involved in the CS standards.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. And then Laurie.
Hi everyone, I'm Laurie Guyon. I'm so excited to see all of you. So hi. It's like a visit of friends, right? Seeing all of you in one place. So my role is lead coordinator for instructional technology programs at WSWHE BOCES, which is upstate New York around Saratoga. We service 31 school districts over 5 counties, and my role is on anything to do with technology integration. So if a district purchases a program like elementary, my role would be to train them on the program. I also push into classrooms and do a lot of classroom instruction with students. For example, this summer we have our extended school year students. I've been doing robotics and coding with all of them just for an hour once a week, just to kind of get them into trying different things. I have 2 STEAM buses that I run. One is with a district, one is out of our BOCES. And again, we're looking at bringing different ideas to students, really that career exploration around what you can do with technology. We do a lot of online and offline activities. I'm a big proponent of you can use a board game to teach sequencing, so why not use the board game, right? So using different things that make sense that don't always have to be high tech, but definitely love the high tech too. I'm also on the NICE board, so any New York people that happen to be out here, I'm a board member there. It's the New York State Computers and Technology and Education program that's through our company that's through all of New York State. So if you have questions or want to be involved in anything there, obviously that's an opportunity as well. I'm an author, just like pretty much everyone on this board, right? And I have a podcast called Smile Factor that I enjoy doing as well. So there's a little bit about me.
Yay, thank you. And everybody is always so busy. It's like you're not just one thing. It's oh this and this and this and this. And so we have a lot of experience, different experiences I think we're going to bring to this conversation. So I'm excited to get started with it. And the first thing, like opportunity, of course, is out there. We've been trying things, whether it's in computer science and with AI and all the technology that we've been using. And I'm just going to throw kind of an intro question out there to anybody who wants to take this one is when we think about AI, what are some ideas or ways that you would suggest for how AI can boost things like creativity and student voice, and not just for students, but also for teachers? Any ideas that you can share? People that are joining in, like you could type them in the chat as well. So whoever may want to take that one, feel free.
I could go just because I'm still on screen here.
Okay.
Um, I was able to push in this year to a second grade class, and I think it showcases the teacher and the student experience using AI. This particular teacher told me very upfront that she's not comfortable with technology in general. So I came in with the assumption I would come in once, and the students had written realistic fiction stories, and they did it on paper, right? The packet with the picture on the top and the words underneath, the typical that you see in a classroom. And she wanted me to help the students imagine their characters to create an image using AI. That was her kind of thought. So I came in with Padlet, and we were able to create the images. And really, what was I guess I should have known because I'm in classes a lot. But what was really remarkable to me for that first visit was the students. Again, teacher not terribly comfortable with technology. The students didn't know what the cursor was. So like they're like that blinky thing, right? What the trackpad was called, where to find the shift key. Like there were certain things they didn't know how to do, how to copy and paste. So we were able to teach some of those technology skills for a second grader that maybe they haven't done before. And then they also got to see their image come to life. And it was like magic in the room, right? When all of a sudden they're like, that's exactly how I pictured it in my head, and it came out. And if it didn't come out quite right, like you mentioned, Rachelle, earlier, there's some bias in a lot of our image generators. They had to figure out what words to put in to kind of fix it. And the teacher was so blown away over the student engagement and their excitement. She asked me to come back, and they decided to take those realistic stories from paper to make them into actual books. So we brought them into Book Creator. And what we were able to do in Book Creator is the students were able to add their own voice. So they read their story out loud. They were able to add in AI images using the Adobe Express that's
Mhm.
built into Book Creator. So they were able to do that. And then they were able to actually type in their story. And again, yes, they're using AI and we're talking about it, but we were also able to have the conversations about copyright. Like some of the students were looking for images that might look just like Lionel Messi or a Nike sneaker. And we were able to talk about why AI doesn't quite do it right, and why,
Mhm.
what's the importance of protecting images. We were able to talk about making sure that we don't use our personal information, right? So we told them, don't put anything that about yourself, don't add any of that into the AI. So it became these rich conversations in English class for them to do their stories. And even something as simple as spell check, like when they wrote it on paper, the teachers would just have them write it out and say, here's the story. And however they spelled the words, they spelled the words. The students didn't know better. But all of a sudden now they're typing it in and they're seeing their word underlined that it's wrong, and they immediately want to fix it. And I went to more than just this one class with it. And some teachers wanted the students to fix it. Some didn't. They wanted the students to be the way they naturally wrote it. It was so important to teach. It wasn't using AI for AI's sake. It taught all of those skills that we know students
Mhm.
need in order for them to use the technology appropriately. So I left that classroom with this, like, this was so much fun. And I learned a lot about, some of the things that we want to make sure we focus on. But the students had this rich book that they were able then to share out using QR codes with their families,
Mhm.
and be able to send it wherever. One student said, so does this mean I'm a published author? And I said, yes, you are a published author. And she's like, so I can buy this on Amazon? And I said, no, unfortunately you can't buy it on Amazon. But I love that she was thinking of herself as a published author, right? She was able to see the career
Right.
that can come from it.
That is, I love that example for so many reasons because you're right, like it does teach a lot of different skills, um, digital citizenship skills because they're like if they're using Padlet or posting something and then the analyzing the images and then just continuing to build upon that. It wasn't just one isolated activity. It was like creating this, okay, learning the prompting and getting it right, and then building on and then adding it into Book Creator. And for some kids, they're hesitant to speak or anything, but just that excitement I can imagine. And I've used Padlet for years. My students, even 10 years ago, used to make fun of me because I would say, I have like 1,000 Padlets on one Padlet. And they're like, that's ridiculous. But even in the last year and a half or so, more so in the past school year, I would do some similar things where I would generate some images. We were studying art in Spanish, and then students would then have to choose one of the artists and give some type of a prompt that was something meaningful to them or based on the content being taught and see what kind of an image it generated. And then write a story about it in Spanish or, whatever. Like there's a lot of great ways to use that. So thanks for sharing that idea. Paige or Marialice, anything to add?
I just want to say that I loved the way you described it, Lori, about it was like layers. There were so many added layers. And to me, about digital citizenship, it is like weaving in and out and adding these layers into that conversation. And even Rachelle, what you said about like for what a great way to like learn Spanish, right? So, and then to get that AI image and then have that conversation, those are adding layers while you're also that goal from your Spanish would be like to learn vocabulary, right?
Mhm.
And writing skills. And so it's not just that add-on, it's those layers that intertwine and just make like learning just magical. So that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, I love that. And Paige?
Yeah, yeah. So as a technology teacher, I loved how there were so many different skills being brought in because in New Jersey and our state, as well as the CSTA standards, no longer include typing or using a mouse or any of those things. So you were able to bring all of those skills that are not part of standards into that lesson. So we the students don't know how to do spell check or format a document, put a title in the center and things like that. So there were so many different layers of the lesson that meet so many different needs of the students. So it's like those hidden gems, that hidden goodness that the students didn't even know they were learning. So yeah, I really love that, how you incorporated all of that in the lesson.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the start of the first question. And the next one, and this is something that people may be familiar with, or maybe not necessarily like the terminology of it, but talking about cognitive debt. And I don't know, in the chat, has anybody heard those phrases used? If you put a Y or an N, cognitive debt, just out of curiosity, before I go into and ask the question. Oh, I love when there's no's. Okay, so cognitive debt is basically when you think about uh, you're trying to get something done and you're just thinking about how to get it done really quickly and taking some different shortcuts or focusing on like, oh, I can do this, but I can use ChatGPT to do all the things. And then it's maybe it puts something out that's quick, but the time that you're spending thinking about it, it's like weighing on you. There's like a mental impact. So it's like this massive burden because you've spent so much time trying to take these shortcuts instead of actually diving in and doing the thing because you thought you could get done quicker. And so one example would be I'm talking about ChatGPT. So a student is using it to write different essays or something, and they're not really learning. They're just getting through the process, but then they're missing out on those foundational skills that they're going to need later. And so when that happens, at some point they're going to not possibly have those skills to think critically and to problem solve and to have resilience to work through a challenge because they took the shortcut. So that's where that term comes from. And so it's like the more that you rely on those types of tools, it's like the debt increases a little bit more, and then it makes it harder to actually be involved in higher order thinking. I had to say that slower because sometimes I say it is blended together. So, in thinking about students, uh, have you had any experiences or that you've seen, or maybe somebody has shared with you where, and it could be for teachers too, who are using AI tools and they're just like, oh, this is a great lesson plan, copy and paste and put it in there. It's perfect. There's no mistakes, or students, just like that example. What do you think is the like long-term impact on that? Or a flip question, how could we kind of work against that, knowing that people might actually do that? I mean, have you seen any examples of this in your work and the people that you've been working with? Oh no, I might have to be the backup on this one. Well, I'll share one, and that was kind of like a heavy question, but I've had some students over the time that ChatGPT has come out and using it to write essays and say, hey, guess who just got an A on the English essay? I'm like, okay, but what happens when you need that knowledge? And oh, guess who is going to use ChatGPT for my math? And I've said to them many times, okay, that's going to get you to that point where you get the essay done, you get the math done. Good luck on that, by the way. This is like 2 years ago. I said, but at some point, whether it's a midterm exam, it's a final, it's in an interview, you never know. I say, when that knowledge that you would have gained if you had done the work yourself entirely or used some of those as a resource, not the only source, it's going to come back to you. And so there have been a couple of students over the years and some other teacher friends who have told me that they've had similar students who ended up going for job interviews or things like that, and they had nothing because they relied so heavily on the use of AI and it had inaccuracies. And even though some of those students, like one of the students that I know of in my case, went through and read what it had written, fully believed that it was factual information. And so based their knowledge off of what ChatGPT created and then was completely wrong about so many things. So when other assessments came up, they didn't understand why they weren't getting anything right, but their knowledge was based on something that wasn't, perfect or accurate in that case. And so then they had to really work twice as hard to go back and relearn everything that they could have learned the first time. And it might have taken longer, but that's okay. Like you don't have to learn things like it's nice when you learn things like really quickly, but there's that part of that ongoing process and improvement and that resilience and all of those skills that they need to develop. So that's just my personal story. I don't know if any of you have your own stories like that.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with my niece. She's going into her senior year of college, and as a finance major, and she said the frustrating part for her with AI is she's not the one that's going to use a chat GPT or Gemini or whatever to do her work. She's going to write the paper, and she's like, so I'll spend 5 hours writing my paper, but the guy sitting next to me hands it an AI one and sometimes gets the better grade. And she said it's incredibly frustrating for her because she's like, I know in the end, like you said, Rachelle, she has the knowledge, she'll be able to get the job, right?
Mhm.
But she says it just makes college less like I don't know what the right word is, but she just feels like there's a frustration level with her that it doesn't really value the process. It only values the product, and that's what she's getting frustrated with. Is she's like, if somebody saw me doing this essay or what I did or how many edits I made, how much research I did, how much time I spent, she's like, I should have got the A no matter how good my final paper was versus the kid who plugged it in and then just said make some mistakes that way it's not perfect, that kind of thing. And I didn't have a good answer for her, because I agree with her. That is a frustration that I hadn't thought of, right? I always think of it from the teacher perspective of, oh gosh, we need to make sure our students are doing the work. But I never thought of it from the student perspective of the kids that find their way around versus
Mhm.
that one student. And it's probably always been that way, but I had never looked at it from that lens. So I'm all for turning this over to the group of you. What should I have said to my niece to help her out in the situation? And maybe Paige or Marialice has some insight too, to kind of follow up on that as well.
We'll
I think
see.
about like I'm going to add like just more of a question to it than necessarily an answer. But it goes back to I feel like it's a time old question. Like we were worried early on that our students were just going to Google something, right? And they were going to copy and paste. And I think it comes back down to assessments, like that larger question about if it's so easy in your situation that the about writing an essay that doesn't necessarily apply, but if it's something that is so easy just to copy and paste, for teachers and educators to think, well, is there something on my end, for assessment that isn't just something that we copy and paste, and how do we get to those like critical thinking skills and something deeper? So I don't have an answer, but I feel like I've got more questions that collectively, if we are, working, whether you've got a team that you get to work with in your building or you have this opportunity like we have right now, I feel like these are the types of things that we need to continue to ponder and kind of dig deep and be uncomfortable about. But I feel like it applies to when we were worried about copy and paste for Google as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think,
Google.
yeah,
Good, Paige.
I was going to say, I think with the K K-12 teachers, not necessarily, I know that we're focusing right here on this question on college, but the K-12 teachers are embedding those skills so that hopefully when they get to college, they already have the skills to know what's authentic and what's not. And that, I mean, if a eighth grader copied and pasted something off of, the internet and handed it in, the classroom teacher would call them on that right away. So I'm hoping that that the educators are going to explain to them why it's not right. Just like, with the digital citizenship, it goes along with that. I mean, that, with their creating in AI or sexting or any of those things, that those are not things that should be done. I hope that we as educators are going to be teaching the students before they get to university. So right now it's that in between stage where everything is so new, but I'm hoping things will change along the line. I don't know if anybody in the chat wants to mention what their schools are doing, or if Marialice wants to talk a little bit about the digital citizenship component.
I am definitely could talk about the digital citizenship component till like the cows come home, but I have a session on that tomorrow. And I want to be just respectful of time, but I do think this is that this is an ongoing conversation right now. It just happens to be about AI, but we've had these same conversations. It's like we're recycling it. And it really makes us have to question about assessments and focus. I loved what Tracy said in the chat about focusing on the process and not that final product. And Laurie, I think that you said that as well, like you were leading on that. So more questions than answers, I think, to this.
I would agree. And there's a lot to unpack, and there's always gonna be more questions. I feel like for every one question that comes up, then there's like a dozen more that stem from it, which is good because you have to keep questioning things. And then people putting in like comments in the chat. And I love learning and hearing from all of you. So, and that was kind of a heavy question too, but it's one that I don't know. I've been thinking about, and just in the course of, I mean, before today too, just how am I using AI and how are the students using AI, and the whole conversation about cheating. And I don't know if anybody here had the same thing. Like the students will say, well, how come we can't use AI, but that teachers can? And I'm transparent with them when I use it for something. Like if I'm making up a project idea, a couple of ideas, and I want to have 10 choices for them, and I get to seven and I cannot think of anything else, I will go to Gemini or ChatGPT and say, can you give me, and put the prompt in. And it gives me some, and some of them are pretty terrible, but I usually pick about three. And I tell the kids, like, okay, three of these are from ChatGPT and the others are mine. And they can usually tell. And they say, well, and they'll ask me, like, well, why did you do that? And I said, because I was trying to come up with really unique, creative ideas. And I wanted to be very different for you. And I said, it's really no different than if I went next door to another teacher and said, hey, can you give me some ideas? I said, it's just that they weren't available at the time that I was working on that. So I said, and I'm being transparent with you. So it's kind of funny that they could actually tell the ones that were not made up by me. So speaking about that, like the co-creating and then the conversations about kids cheating and skipping that struggle. So with the work that you do, and either, even in personal lives, but personally and professionally, when we talk about like, is it a partner? And sometimes it's been referred to kind of as a crutch for students, and the same for teachers. So where do you, if anybody wants to, and I can speak to this too, like where's the line between, oh, AI is just my assistant, it's my partner and it's helping me, versus like I am letting it do everything for me. And that could be for me as the teacher or for me as a learner. Like how do you distinguish between those? And if any of you want to speak to that, great. If you don't, anybody in the chat can type in and I can read it, or I can always speak to it too, since I asked the question. I'll do the dramatic like 5-second pause. Yay, Laurie.
There was a question in the chat too about the Google searches too, about did it make students better at research, critical thinking and such? And I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I know there was research on it. And somebody else had mentioned the research that has been done like through MIT on whether ChatGPT is making us smarter or not. I always say that AI is my thought partner, which is exactly what you said in your question, right? Because that's how I use it, and that's how I try to teach students to use it. For example, early on when AI first was like, teachers were kind of get nervous about the cheating. I went to a fourth grade class that was a math class, which was an unusual place for me to go to teach AI. But she wanted me to spend some time with the students talking about good behavior and bad behavior online, right? Which should they do around doing their math? Because she was concerned they were using AI to do their math homework. So I set up a chat bot with School AI, and I had the students ask the questions, and I asked the chat bot to give them the answers to the questions. And if they answered well, to tell them a joke. But if they just asked for a joke, it was going to try to get them back into the work that they were doing. And the idea was I wanted to show that AI can be used effectively, or it can be a distraction, right? Or it could take away from the learning process. And so we were able to debrief that, right? The human side of anything we do in the classroom is the most important part. So they got their content in using the technology, but the debrief and the discussions that we had afterwards, that's where they got that deeper learning, right? That's where we're able to collaborate and communicate and ask the questions we have. And I think that's how you have to use AI. It has to be something that it's just another tool in your toolkit. It's not the thing, right? No different than smartboards were. I always use in my presentations, Mr. Rogers quotes about technology, and everything he lists about technology still applies today. But he was talking about the invention of the television. That hasn't changed since TV has been around. Everyone says, "Oh, education's going away because we have TV. Education's going away because we have Google. Education's going away because we have AI." And that's not the case. It's just that the way we teach and how we teach and what we should focus on, we're not in the information era anymore. We have to be because the information's available, but being able to use that information effectively to be able to communicate and collaborate and think critically, that's where we are now, and that's how we have to use AI.
Yeah, and I love the Mr. Rogers reference and something that you said too, like, and I've said that before as well, like it's just a tool. And there's a quote out there, and I forget his last name, but his first name is Oren, Oren, and he said, AI is just a tool. The choice about how you use it is yours. And when I think about like where's the line, you know, if you're using it as a way that you're enhancing, your instructional design, it helps you, plan a little bit faster, it supports differentiation, then and that's good as long as it's not replacing like your intentional like thought process around your pedagogical practices. And so like that's one thing when you're like, okay, I have to do all of these things, but I really want to spend time with students, so I'm going to streamline some of those like time consuming tasks, but I'm still going to look at it as a support. And I mean, we've seen a lot of tools out there, and a thought partner, somebody to brainstorm with, or maybe you've written a lesson and you just want some feedback from it, but not to just copy and paste it. And I always say, like, when it totally takes you away from working with your students and working with your colleagues, it's not a partner anymore. Like, it should amplify and help you enhance what you're already doing with sound pedagogical practices and focus, and not take that away. And if it does, then that's when it shifts to the other side. So, but I'm a huge fan of quotes, so I always think about that, like many quotes. Paige or Marialice, anything on that one?
Yeah, I was going to say that I use it as a personal assistant almost. And I compare it with when I talk to my students about it, it's the same as using a calculator. So the younger grades aren't allowed to use calculators, but I run a school store. And at the school store, they're allowed to use calculators because they have to analyze their profits and loss. So, and when we do spreadsheets and things like that, we allow the spreadsheets to create the formulas for us. We're not going to sit there and start, I do go through the basics, how to enter a formula, but then after that, we're allowed to use that pull down and just copy, the formula all the way down. So I explained to them that these are tools that they can use once they understand what they're doing. So, because you need to be able to go back and check your work. So you can't trust everything that's said in on any internet platform. You have to be able to go back and use your knowledge to be able to understand if this information that you're receiving is accurate or not. And I have a great story that I'm going to be real quick, that I tell my students all the time about the Wikipedia and Jello. So when Wikipedia came out, I can't even remember how long ago this is. A radio station had done a story on Jello, and it was right after I guess the first Harry Potter book came out, and you have all those Bertie Bott's different flavored jelly beans. So they went into the Jello Wikipedia page and they added all these really gross, disgusting flavored Jellos, and it took them months and months before somebody noticed that Jello does not make these flavors, and that it was just made up by some random person. So again, I use that as my example, that you need to be able to go back and check. So you need that knowledge ahead of time before you can use the information. So just as a teacher, keep embedding that into the classroom.
Yeah,
I feel like
absolutely agree.
that adds to that, when those conversations that we had years ago about like being a consumer online or being a creator online. And that still is really relevant here, with the whether it was the copy or the paste, or um, and we haven't gotten to this point, and I know the conversation will probably like lead here, but I feel like I have to mention the fact that whatever the tech is, school communities can tend to be really reactive, right? And they can have, like a list of don't statements about what like we can't do. And here is like with the just the panel of people on this and the years of expertise here, and the people that are joining us, what a wonderful opportunity to change those don't statements into I will statements. And I feel like, Laurie, you would kick this question off about the human aspect of it all. And that is so important. And it's that human, right? And it's going to be that guide on the side, our educators, right? I've always considered myself a guide on the side. I can consider AI as my guide on the side or my thought leader, but that human connection, and how important it is that we are, even if we're uncomfortable, like with, I might not know everything about, answering these questions about AI, but I'm willing to model and have these conversations and say, I'm willing, I don't know that answer. I'm willing to learn with you. Or Rachelle, when you were talking about even earlier, you had picked out the 3 questions and then having that conversation so that you were transparent. Like, this is how I am using it. Um, I don't know. I always want to bring back the positive aspect of it as well. And so having those conversations with students, if they even wanted to come up with like how, instead of don't do this, what are those like I will statements about AI that is change it from reactive to proactive?
I have said the same thing, although I think I've said the reverse, like better be proactive than reactive, especially in talking about more like the legal kind of things about it, like have something set in place because like if you don't, that's not good. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm keeping my eye on the chat here. So shifting a little bit. So like we know there's all these possibilities with AI, like some of the good, some of the bad. Uh, Kids have been able to cheat like forever. I've said that so many times, like that's not something new. It's just it can be done faster, and we have to definitely make sure that we are using it or teaching about it. And like Laurie said, like it doesn't even have to involve technology. I mean, even just having conversations about it. Because I've had some students in my 8th grade class that and they're like, I don't want AI around. Like, I want AI to go away. I was like, well, you know what? I got bad news for you. I don't think it's really going anywhere because it's been around. And the one student said, well, it's only been around since like 6 months ago because we were using ChatGPT when it first came out. That was, at that point, December of 2023. And I said, well, it actually has been around a lot longer than that. And I said, when, back in the middle of 1900s, and they were like, what? Really? How's that possible? And I said, so it's been around, so it's probably not going anywhere, and you're going to see this, continue. I said, and you may need to use it later on. I said, besides school, I said, some of the things you're already using have AI in them. I said, but in whatever you do after school, if you go into career, higher education or whatever, that you might be required to know how to use a certain platform that has AI, or use AI for some of your research, but be able to fact check and all of these things. And they weren't real happy with that answer, but I was like, look, this is the reality of it. So now this is your chance to learn about it so that you can keep safe and know how to use it in ways that are ethical, safe, and responsible, and not to be the one doing the work for you. Like so many other students at that point were like teachers. I mean, I spent a Saturday night on the first Saturday night for 3 hours just going down, typing in every prompt I could think of, and just like, oh my gosh, it's translating everything, it's doing everything. Like, this is amazing, but also scary. And I've joked that language educators, I feel, were more prepared because we've been dealing with Google Translate for years. And so when ChatGPT came around, I was like, oh, okay, now everybody has that same kind of Google Translate experience. So, but you did say like modeling it for our students, and this question, I'm just curious, like, in all grade levels, do you think that it's important? I mean, we've seen things coming out from different states, from the government, from different organizations about AI literacy from K through 12. But in my experience, when I've done some training, either at conferences or just with schools, a lot of educators are quite apprehensive about AI coming into the classroom, especially in the earlier years, because of the fear of the technology and just keeping students safe. But do you have any suggestions for any educators about best practices or how to model for students of all ages, you know, the ethical use of it, and like teaching them like this is how you prompt and this is how you evaluate what you're getting back, the output. Any ideas that you can share that might encourage somebody to be like, okay, I can do this. I can do this activity because I'm going to prepare them. I could say,
Oh,
hey, Laurie.
okay, Laurie, go. Because I was just gonna say it's about a disposition to me, right? Like, so we are talking about AI right now, but just like if you think of technology as the larger umbrella, there are, and Laurie started even when she shared her first example about like the teacher was really uncomfortable and nervous and afraid, right? So I still feel that in it is really important if you have that tech integrator or the media specialist that you invite people in to learn alongside you and for you to be able to model that you're a learner as well. I think that is really pertinent in this conversation around AI because then I can call somebody in like Laurie or Paige, can you come in and I'm really nervous about this, but I know that it's important for my students and I want to learn alongside my students as well and I want to model that for them and we want to have these critical conversations. I also think because I had talked about the intergenerational is like having that showcase. I love to showcase students' work, like the positive of how to use tech for good. So after I've invited Laurie and Paige into my classroom for this great project-based learning, let's have a showcase where we invite the outside community to come. And now the students are actually going to be teaching like the families and the
Mhm,
grown-ups that come. And I just feel like that's all you have to do is you have to have a willingness, a disposition that
mhm.
says, I'm willing to learn alongside my students. And then you invite the right partners to come in and be a part of that process. That's my winning combination.
I think it is a winning combination. Thank you, Laurie.
Yeah, I'm totally on with you, Marialice. You know that, but every time the students do things, they really should have the opportunity to kind of showcase what they've learned in the way that's most natural to them, opening up the world to their students as much as they can. I was fortunate enough last week to go to the Rural Schools Conference in upstate New York. It was in Lake Placid, which is a beautiful place to have a conference, by the way. But having the conversations I see Paige put in about the farm bot, the big question there, and this was a very low tech conference for me to go to, is mostly administrators and school board members. But their concern was how does the technology integrate into their agriculture, right? Talking about farm to school, STEM in the farm, all of those kind of things. And for me, like I like to take it that step back. So it's yes, we want to showcase those careers. We want to show that using drones or AI in farming can really make a difference. AI is doing that with cows, right, with milking and all that already. So there's ways that we can help on the farms and think about AI from the rural perspective. But to go back to like what Rachelle was saying, where we're talking about how do we teach it, what's the parts that we need. I start without and like getting teachers less afraid to use it. I always start with the no tech. So let's take a simple game like there's a building roads game, or it's the rush hour traffic jam game, which is literally a logic puzzle. And but by using that, you're teaching how GPS works, how AI decides the best routes for you to take when you're going different places. So it's already embedded in the things that we do every day, because everybody uses GPS, right? Everybody's getting in their car and doing that. So let's talk about how AI works in that function, or or how an algorithm works in that function to be able to do that. And I think bringing it in from that perspective, where they're starting to think about, that it's already, computer science in general is in everything we do. So like, there's a really fun game called Picturica. My kids loved it when we were little. It's like a Where's Waldo kind of game. And when you're looking for something on there and you're playing the game, we typically just play the game, but you can pause for a second and say, all right, you found that musical instrument on this Picturica board. What did you do? How did you
Mhm.
find that? And you start talking about abstraction. I was able to think about the concepts and the parts that I needed in order to find it. Or you can decompose the problem. First I did this, then I did this, to be able to build on those skills. And those skills are transferable to whatever it is we're doing with AI. And so I'm a big proponent of starting at that baseline. The wow factor of AI is fun. Like somebody mentioned, like you can use Brisk to check student work to see how much time they went on it. That is a great way to get some hesitant teachers in, because all of a sudden they feel like they have more control. And I think that's a big part of it is we feel like AI is taking over our control. But again, you said that about calculators, you said about Google, we said about television. So we just have to figure out ways that we can harness it and teach it so that it's used in the most appropriate way.
Agreed. Yes.
And
Paige,
I'd like Paige to
anything?
talk more about the farm bot.
Yeah, I was at a conference in Cleveland, I guess about 2 weeks ago, and the people from the Midwest were all talking about this farm bot. And Laurie had mentioned also about the dairy farmers that they're in their classrooms, they're actually teaching AI, because when they go home to their family farms, they, instead of being, waking up at 4 in the morning and going out and milking the cows, they're going out and checking the computers and making sure that everything's running, so that the school districts are really focusing on the use of AI, because it's going to help their farming industry and not hinder it. So it's not replacing. So that's a thing to think about, that AI is not going to, and teachers are hesitant because, there's a lot of talk about AI replacing teachers, so
Mhm.
AI is not going to be replacing jobs. AI is going to be either assisting jobs or um, altering jobs. I think about toll booth collectors. So everybody was worried that the toll booth, or again, I'm from the city, you know, replacing the subway token clerk, which we don't have subway tokens anymore. But they're just that those positions have been changed. So yes, now with the invention of, like, the toll in where we are, it's called the Easy Pass, but the
Mhm.
toll transponders, it's just that the jobs have shifted. So it's not replacing people. Jobs are not going away. And I think that a lot of people are afraid that AI is going to take away jobs, but there's going to be more jobs created.
Yep. They say the people that don't know how to use AI will be replaced. And I spoke at a law school a couple of weeks ago, and there was an article I'd read, and it said, AI will replace lawyers that don't know how to use AI. And you have to keep up with it. And you're right. Even back in, oh goodness, 1920s, I think in the city of New York, the people that manually switched the traffic lights, there were thousands and thousands of them that had those jobs. And then they became automated. And some people did actually lose the jobs, but most of them just shifted into some other type of a job that was created and opened up. Um, so it'll be interesting to see. And as we start to wind down, there are so many questions, but there's a lot that I could ask, and I am going to be dropping a few questions into the chat for just some of the participants' reflections. But I wanted to focus for this last part on things like, looking at AI literacy and digital citizenship. And, we could talk about equity and lots of other really important topics that are involved in it. But since we have Marialice here, of course, the digital citizenship, and then all of you that are on the panel, so I'm going to go with that one. And so the question that I have, and Marialice, I'm going to go to you first for this one. So, what does it mean to be a responsible digital citizen in an AI-powered world?
It's it's so important. I mean, the first part about digital citizenship is talking about safety, right? Like, how do I create safe spaces for myself? How do I create safe spaces for others? Like, so coming from a safety lens, but is part about that of that responsibility. But when you look at, and I'm going back, Laurie, I had commented that it was like layers. I think of digital citizenship as layers. So that first foundation has to be that safety. And then you continue to add the balance, which is talking about, and this is just about tech, about, walking away from your technology, being unplugged. Also, if in the context of AI, how do I not completely rely on AI? How do I use AI as a thought leader, not as a copy and paste opportunity? And then that adds in, if we're going to talk about the literacy aspect, about media literacy, I feel like we've kind of touched upon about being the importance of those like fact check, being able to check your facts and how to do that accurately. Um, and then I feel like that, that next layer is always talking about that inclusive space. And I know that we'll run out of time to really get into ethics, but like when you continue to add these different layers about being responsible, it is actually putting these things into practice while you're using AI. And the first person to be able to do that is the grown up in the situation. And how I had answered the question previously, if you are uncomfortable about, you invite those, like the people that on your team, your tech integrators, your media specialists to come and co-teach something with you so that you can purposefully and meaningfully add these layers into everyday conversation. Because this isn't just a check in the box type of like we had it once. Like, remember, we used to have assemblies and they used to scare the kajibas out of us about all the bad things that were going to happen with tech. And an administrator could say, oh, we had that conversation. This has to be ongoing all school year, whether it's inside or outside our school walls. So that's how I'd answer that one.
Thank you. I love that. And I think um, when I think about it too, it's like for me, I say, and I've taught digital citizenship to my students and cybersecurity and all of these things for many years. Of course, the topics have evolved a little bit, but I want them, I say to them, like, I want you to understand how AI works, what it does. I want you to know that you should question what it's creating for you and evaluate it. And then make the decision of like, is this something that I should use as part of what I'm writing or what I'm creating? And then also it goes, they need to understand how to protect their privacy. And there's a lot that's involved into it. And so I think, like you said, like it's something that we are all responsible for. It doesn't fall on just like one teacher, like a technology teacher, for example, or somebody's a computer science teacher. It's like all of us doing little bits and pieces here and there, modeling it for them, I think is what's going to make the biggest difference. And it's going to impact us too, because we're going to be mindful of it in our own work. So thank you for that, Laurie or Paige.
Go ahead, Paige, you can go. Oh, okay, I'll go. So yeah, really big question, really. And I learned a lot about digital citizenship by following Marialice over all these years. So, I feel like everything she said, I was like, I could just be nodding, saying same, right? Same here, right? Same idea. I think for me, at least how I got started with caring about or thinking about what digital citizenship means is that one of the first years, if not the first year that I had iPads in the classroom, I had a student take a picture of another student with their iPad in the locker room, in the gym locker room, and we had to address that. And it was that moment that I went, I can't just hand something to a student and not teach him how to use it, and how to use it properly. And because I was so new to the concept, we actually went through the whole common sense media, common sense education lessons as a group because I needed to learn it to be able to help the students out. Now, like Marialice has said, I've done K-12, I've done assemblies, I've done classroom instruction. I run cybersecurity takeover days off of my steam bus. We do digital citizenship carnivals. Like now it's a part of everything we do, but it has to be every day to get that consistent message. Like, if you think about when you're learning your multiplication, your times tables, you have to do that repetition all the time for it to stick, right? It's the same thing with digital citizenship. You have to help students understand all of those layers of what it is, all of the parts in order for them to have that full picture to make sure that it sticks. So my argument is it should be in every class every day. Like Paige said, we have computer science standards. In New York, we have computer science and digital literacy standards, so or digital fluency standards. So we can we're supposed to teach all of this every day in every classroom. So I think that's what it comes down to when you're talking about digital citizenship. It's build that foundation and continuously add the layers so that students see the whole picture. It's not just Google yourself anymore, right? It's how are you talking to an AI chatbot? Are you giving personal information to that person or to that chatbot? I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I have an Aura ring on my hand and it has an advisor. And there are times I have questions and I'm like, how do I word this so it's not too personal, but I can get the information I want? But that's me knowing that I have to be careful that I'm not using it as my counselor, right? That it's not going to help me solve a problem. But I could say, hey, you know what? I need some breathing techniques for this, or help me with this stretch or whatever, and I can have that information given to me. But if we don't teach it, how will our students know what to do when they're in that situation?
Right. Yes, agreed. Thank you. Paige?
I'm going to defer because I don't want to take away from the conversation tomorrow on digital citizenship.
Oh,
So
okay. Well,
we'll leave it
then
at that. And we're just about at time as well.
I know. And I did have one final question to kind of pull a couple of the themes in together. And we could type in the chat too. And I put two reflection questions into the chat for everybody if you wanted to share ideas. But we've talked about, computer science and storytelling. And I mean, the activity that Laurie shared, there's so much involved in that. And does anybody have suggestions of how you can embed AI ethics into computer science and storytelling work? Because I think a lot of times it's like, oh, it's just one more thing on top, when really, in fact, it's like you can, like you said, like weave those things in. Any ideas? Any last thoughts, I should say?
I always tell teachers when I'm doing PD on these topics that at the beginning of the school year, that very first day, and we're coming up to it again, right? All our first days. And the students, they often have students create the classroom rules together. If you take those same classroom rules and at the end of it add the word online, right? It just adds that thought that, okay, what I do in the class matters the same. So I'm going to be kind to others. I'm going to be kind to others online. I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to be kind to myself online, right? So it's just sometimes adding that thought process that your good behavior, bad behavior. Like when I do AI ethics, we do that. We actually do a T-chart, write it on paper, what's good behavior, what's bad behavior online, and we discuss it. And that still has to happen, right? When we're talking about AI. And I think it's starting at that foundation at that level as well.
Thank you. Marialice, anything?
I'm typing a response in
Oh, okay.
about policies, but I just got it in there. I probably would have kept going, but like
Yeah.
start to notice the language in your policies,
Mhm.
reactive, proactive, notice the voices, and that gets into that ethical piece, whose voice is included, whose voice is not included. I think those are really important.
Yeah, I just typed something in the chat too, because I had done, even back in February in Texas, I had a room full of um, administrators. It was a leadership exchange, and I did AI in the law. And I said, raise your hand if your school has a policy listed on their website, any guidance on AI. Not one hand went up. I was like, okay, raise your hand if in your school you are talking about it, working on the policy. And there were like, in this one case, like five or so hands, and a gentleman in the front, he's like, yeah, right. He's like, that's not even in the lineup of things that we're discussing. I said, that is a problem because if you don't have a policy that's there, even if it's not like this massive policy, you still need to have something that gives guidelines to students, to teachers, to the family, to everybody in the school community, because things happen when it comes to AI and you don't want to leave yourself vulnerable. And so um, I love asking that question, but I cringe when I do some of those. And I did it at ISTE as well, and people were like, "Nope, nope, we don't have anything like that." I'm like, "Problem."
I got to do a session with Laurie and we asked one of the it was at a workshop at FETC and they were to find their like technology policy and whether they couldn't find it like or it hadn't been updated since like the 1980s. Like it's really I just wanted to add in that everyone today just see if you can find a tech policy available on your school's website. Also then notice the language, notice if it's even mentioning AI. When was the last day, when was the last time it was updated, because these things, as alarming as they are, need to be addressed. And we're the people to, go back to our school communities and say, hey, we need to put a committee together. We need these types of voices to be part of this as well.
Agreed. And yeah, so thanks to everybody for typing comments into the chat. And I mean, takeaways are like always analyze, think through, model, guide students in using AI and be mindful of your own practices with it as well. And there's lots of other great things that you can do. And this learning that's happening here with elementary is awesome. So this is definitely the space to be in. So thanks, big thanks to Nicole for bringing us all together.